Recording is started. It is February 8th, 2023. It is 10:11 a.m. My goal is to finish the class part by 10:45 because I know somebody has to go. And then I will open up for questions for the remaining few minutes of the class. Need the marker, right? What I want to talk about today, I looked through my audio, the notes, and I don't see a recording on this, so I'm pretty sure I didn't teach this to you. There's actually a really, really interesting concept that plays out both between people and between us and Hashem, which is the three, as one of my rabbis calls it, the three rules of relationships. Three rules of relationships. Now, do relationships have three rules? Probably have a lot more. But these are three more like fundamental principle rules. I could probably just rename the class three fundamental principles of relationships, probably be more accurate. But, rule sounds more poppy. Three rules of relationship. What's the first, most important, most fundamental rule of any relationship?
Respect.
Before that.
Relationship. Have a relationship.
Well, what's the first rule to have the relationship?
Acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
I feel like we've done this before.
There is some overlap with the Ten Commandments. That's why there's overlap, because it's also talking about relationships. What's the most important thing you could possibly do? Number one, to have a relationship with someone.
Want to have?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You can't have a relationship with somebody you don't want to have a relationship with. The first rule of relationship, rule number one, is that a relationship requires,
Effort.
well, I was going to say choice, but I hear the idea of effort. Effort is more general, choice is more specific. You have to want to have a relationship with somebody. If you don't want to have a relationship with someone,
Do you want a relationship with me?
then you don't have one. Now, generally speaking, this is something that is more naturally understood by women and more difficult to comprehend for men. And there's a reason for that. But I'm always amused by, a guy is trying to date a girl, knocks on her door, she slams the door in his face. He goes back to his buddies, they say, how'd it go? He goes, I'm making progress. I'm wearing her down. Like waves on the ocean. Like, what do you mean? She wants nothing to do with you. She wants nothing to do with you. He's like, yeah, well, she just doesn't know who I am yet. Maybe that's why she wants nothing to do with you, because she knows you very well. Now, I get why that's so, because men in general are expected to be the ones who go out to get the relationship. So men by nature have to have a little bit of stalker in them. Just a little, not too much. What do I mean by that? I mean that as a man, you need to have a little persistence, a little effort into it. Because, sometimes, a person plays a little bit of hard to get. Now, why would anybody ever play hard to get? Because they want to know if you're serious about it. If a guy goes up to a girl and says, hey, you want to go out? And she's like, I don't know, I'm kind of busy. And he's like, okay, and he walks away. Okay, so the guy really doesn't want it that much. He's not that interested. He's not that into you. But if a guy comes and says, hey, you want to go out? And she's like, well, no, I'm kind of busy. So he's like, well, that's fine, we'll do another day. Or, well, what are you busy with? Maybe we could do it together. Or, but whatever, he's a little persistent. Now, if a guy is too persistent, when the girl is obviously not interested, that's when it crosses from, persistence into stalker, right? So that's why I say a little bit of stalker is okay. Too much is obviously bad, right? So relationship requires choice. If I want a relationship with you and you want a relationship with me, now we have one. If I want a relationship with you and you don't want a relationship with me, we don't have a relationship. Reminds me, there was a story that I heard myself. One of my rabbis was talking about this older woman who had come to yeshiva, and she was trying to figure out how to help her son. And my son, he's having trouble. Maybe I can get him to come to yeshiva. And the rabbi said, are you very close with your son? She goes, oh, yes, we're very close. We have a wonderful relationship. And then the conversation continued, and then it came out, it's like, oh, no, yeah, he doesn't call me. I haven't spoken to him in 6 months. But you said, yeah, we're very close. He doesn't call you. He doesn't return your calls. He doesn't pick up the phone. That's not a relationship. There's nothing there right now. Right? No worries, it's all good. I didn't think you were sneaking behind me to like put a wire around my neck and garrote me, I'm not worried about it. It's a great word. Vocabulary word of the day. Garot. Right? Means to strangle someone to death with a thin wire.
Okay.
That's right. Elmo garrots. That was good, Sesame Street. Oh my God, you made my day. Okay. LOL, yeah. Okay. Alright. Raffle mouth. Alright, it's fine. It's for my daughter. She knows my humor at this point. She knows. I think we know, Rabbi. We know. Yes, you're vegan. I get it. Yeah, we know. You said it's. It's
13 and she still likes Everyone's thinking that. Okay, hello.
Okay.
You good?
I'm good, Baruch Hashem. All right. Okay, good. Now, how does this relate to our relationship with Hashem? What is the religious aspect of this rule? Right? So the rabbis teach us that how are we as human beings created? When the Torah says we were created, it says we were created in the image of God, B'Tselem Elokim. But what does that mean? So one of the most popular answers, maybe the most popular answer, is that the idea of Tselem Elokim, right, the image of God, means that we have free will, right? What's called in Hebrew Bechira Chavshis, right? We have free choice. Now, that's kind of just think about it. The image of God, our divine self, the part of us that is most like the infinite creator, the highest part of our entire being is that we have the ability to choose. Like, why is that the highest? Some rabbis have said the intellect, whatever, but most people say this. But now, with the first rule of relationships, it makes perfect sense. Because if we were created to have a relationship with Hashem, if that's the whole reason we exist, we've discussed this, right? The ultimate pleasure of existence of connecting to the Creator. And if we frame that connection in terms of a relationship, then that means that Hashem wants us to have a relationship with Him. He has to give us the choice. Because a relationship is only a relationship if you choose it. If you are forced into a relationship, by its very definition, it is no longer a relationship. I'll tell you a story that illustrates this, and then we'll move on to number 2. Please stop me, just raise your hand if you have any questions. There was once, it's actually a really funny story. I think it's funny. See if you're amused by it. This couple married, 10 years? 10th anniversary. They're out having a wonderful steak dinner, whatever it is. And she says, we're married 10 years. You really are an incredible husband. And I have a lot of girlfriends that got married, and sadly some of them got divorced, and I know it happens. But even the ones who are still married, none of them have husbands like you. You're really special. Like the care, the patience, dealing with my nuttiness, pregnancy, kids. You've just been amazing. How have you been such a good husband? And he's, being all humble, no, it's all good. But she keeps, she wants to know. And if I was like, all right, you want to know? I'll tell you my secret. She's like, huh? It's a good time. 10 years ago, today, we got married. So 10 years ago, before we came down to the actual wedding, your dad pulled me aside. He said, come here, I want to talk to you. I told you this? Okay. So it's worth repeating. It's worth repeating for those who don't remember, who haven't heard it. Takes him to the side and says, my daughter is the most important thing in the world to me. And I just want you to know, as he shows him, he pulls his jacket aside, he shows him a gun. He goes, if you ever make her unhappy, they'll never find your body. And the guy looks at his wife across the 10th anniversary dinner table and says, and so for the past 10 years, every time I've seen you, I've imagined your father with a gun.
That would be so sad.
Right? Now, I have said this story hundreds of times over the years, and it's always the same reaction. could be a room of 200 people, right? And what you see is like a lot of the guys get it, but some of the guys are kind of like a little bit confused by the story. But all of the women are like, they're like, it bothers them. They're upset by the story. Why? Because I told you it's more intuitive to a woman. Is that's not a real relationship. That's 10 years of faking it, right? Now, is that entirely fair? No, because sometimes you fake it till you make it. Whatever, maybe he really feels it. But at the same time, the idea that the whole time you're being nice to me because you're afraid of being killed by my father takes away something very real from our relationship. We sense that. We get that right away. So if Hashem has a gun to our head, so to speak, we have no choice, then the relationship is not as real. And that's one of the most famous stories in the Talmud illustrates this problem. It says that we came to Har Sinai to get the Torah by Shavuos. And it says that we were encamped Tachas Hahar, under the mountain. And the Talmud says that it was literally under the mountain, that Hashem picked up the mountain, put it over the Jewish people, and said, accept my Torah. And if not, you'll be buried here forever. So, I don't know if that literally happened, if there was a mountain over, or if it's just metaphorical. I don't know. But what I do know is that certainly what the idea means, whether it was literal or not, there's a meaning behind it. The meaning behind it is we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice whether or not to accept the Torah. So what do the rabbis say? They say, there will come a time in the future where we will be given the choice and to really accept the Torah now. Does anybody know which time in our history? Purim. That's right. Kimu v'kiblu. They established and they accepted. In the time of Purim, we finally, with full choice and full recognition of everything that happened in the past, we needed... I'll give you another an analogy that will make it easy to understand. Do you think my small children have any choice to have a relationship with me? No. They're slaves and subjects in my home, which means that our relationship is not really a relationship. I'm the master, they're the servant. I teach, they listen. I command, they obey, hopefully.
You do have a relationship with them.
But not much, because they're little. First of all...
How old are we talking?
My 4-year-old, my 8-year-old. But well, once you get to my daughter, who's now 13, she's old enough, that's why Bas Mitzvah's 12, Bar Mitzvah's 13, that's the age where people start to become old enough and mature enough to begin to have at least internally a choice. At least inside their heart and in their mind. And so that's the time when you really have to develop the relationship. And as they get even older, my 19-year-old, who I only see him once a month, he comes home for Shabbos once a month. All the rest of the time he's in the dormitory. The relationship that I have with him is very much based on his choice. If he chooses not to talk to me or call me or be involved with me, then it's my loss. We don't have a relationship anymore. Baruch Hashem, he does. We get along really well.
You sure
Right?
about that? Joking.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
yeah, I'm sure about that. I'm sure. I can say with confidence, I'm very sure about that.
I'm joking.
Yeah. And so I know you're. It's a callback to the previous story. I get it, right? But so you can imagine the Jewish people at Har Sinai as being kind of like children in that sense. Hashem is like, you're getting a Torah, whether you like it or not. You're getting a Torah. Here's it. Yeah, Nasiv and Ishmael. Whatever. There's a lot of details, but the Gemara, when they say that Hashem put a mountain over the head, it's like, what do you mean? I thought they accepted it. They did, but they didn't fully. They kind of did. They were forced to it. The most simple answer, there's a lot of answers. The most simple answer is they accepted the written Torah, but they wouldn't accept the oral Torah without Hashem forcing them. And then later, by Purim, that's when they accepted the rabbis and the oral Torah. But the written Torah, they always accepted. That's the most simple, straightforward answer. I think that there's other more complicated answers, but that's a good one. You can use that one. Okay. But in some aspect, they were forced. Until later, when they accepted. And we're all like this. When we're little, you don't have a choice. As you get older, now you have a choice. You move out of the house, now you really have a choice. That's how you really know how good a relationship a parent has developed with their children, by what happens after they move out. Unless you're still sending them checks. But then, in that aspect, it's still a little bit forced. I have to be nice. She's sending us money, you know. Okay. Good. Questions on this before we move on to number 2? Pretty clear, right? Yeah.
No, thanks. We're good.
Oh, you give me an A-OK sign. Okay.
Not asking that. No, actually, I can read it.
Yay. I'm working on it. Okay, number 2. Now, the second rule of relationships, it's actually an extension of rule number 1. Rule number 3 is a bit different. But rule number 2 is actually an extension of rule 1, which is that a relationship, just after I said that. Hold on. I jinxed it, that's right. I would say Jews don't believe in jinxes. I was thinking, you see the red strings? Yeah, people. Some Jews do believe in jinxes. Okay. Relationship are only as strong as the side that chooses the least. Or another way of saying it is a relationship is only as strong as its weakest link. So use numbers for illustration. If I want to have 100 units of relationship with you, and you want to have 20 units of relationship with me, we're not going to find the mean. 100 plus 20 divided by 2 is 60. We don't have a 60-unit relationship. We have a 20-unit relationship. Whoever wants it less is the one who determines how much there is. Right? But think about it, like this. If I want to talk to you for an hour a day, but you're only willing to talk to me for 5 minutes a day, then we're only going to talk for 5 minutes a day, because you're going to hang up. Say, I'm done. So that's what it is. That's what's there. Whoever wants it less determines how much there is. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, the religious aspect of this, connecting between us and Hashem, is actually quite profound. Who wants relationship more between us and Hashem and Hashem to us? Hashem. Exactly. How much relationship does Hashem want with us?
10 times more than we do. He yearns it. He really wants it. Wow. No, he really does. It actually makes him sad when you don't. So
how much? 10 times?
A lot.
You'd say a lot?
A million times.
Million times?
Quadrillion.
Infinite.
Yeah, infinite. Yeah.
Hashem wants all the It's like the meme. It's like how many push-ups can Chuck Norris do? All of them. Right? It's like how much relationship does Hashem want with us? He wants all of it. He wants the infinite. He wants the complete. Everything that's possible to have. We are finite, limited beings. And so our ability to invest energy and choice and work hard on the relationship is always going to be less than infinite. Can we agree with that?
Also because we die.
That's a different aspect. Let's just talk about while you're alive. It doesn't. The whole death and afterlife thing is not relevant right now. I always have less than infinite energy because I'm a finite being. And so how much I invest in the relationship will always be less than Hashem. Well, if that's true, and it seems very clear and obvious with a little bit of thought, that leaves us with a profound situation, which is that the amount of relationship that we have with Hashem is entirely our choice. It's entirely our choice how much relationship with Hashem we have. That was an odd place to laugh.
I'm not laughing at you.
I didn't think you were.
Or at the board, whenever I'm talking to her about something.
It's totally fine. It was just like...
So
how much relationship we have with Hashem, according to rule number 2, if a relationship is only as strong as the one who wants it less, and we're always the one who wants it less, then the amount of relationship we have with Hashem is always 100% entirely up to us. We can't blame... If we have a wonderful relationship with Hashem, that's great. We worked on that. We did that. If we have a terrible relationship with Hashem, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So it's a very exciting proposition, but it's also a very scary one. What's the exciting part of it? One of the things, motivation experts, people who have looked experimented in workplaces and schools and homes to figure out what motivates people, what gets people to get off their tuchus and do something. They have found that one of the major factors is something called autonomy. Autonomy means that I choose. It also means that what I do matters. What I do matters. I have an effect. Somebody who's just working on a factory line and just meh, 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 1,000 times a day, it's like a living hell. one of the things they did is that they gave factory workers, it's a real thing they did in companies, is the factory worker now has a choice where if he sees something going wrong, he could actually press a button and stop the whole thing. He has that ability. He could stop the whole thing, bring in an inspector, see if there's anything going on, the guy fixes it, and they go, oh. And even if there's nothing wrong, the fact that he stopped it, he gets a star. You thought there was something wrong, you stopped it, good for you. Right? So what happens is that most of the time they don't stop it because they don't see problems. But just the fact that they could, they have a sense of, I could have an effect. What I do matters. I'm not just just pressing this button all day with no... that changes their happiness level, their satisfaction with work, right? Their motivation and their effectiveness. They're better workers. So all of life is like that. So think about it. The most important aspect of our entire lives from a Jewish perspective is our relationship with Hashem. There's nothing more important. Every other relationship is just trying to teach us how to relate to Hashem. Husband and wife, teach you how to relate to Hashem. Parents and children, teach you how to relate to Hashem. Right? That's why, if we have somebody who has issues with their parents, or issues with their friends, or issues with their spouse, it makes their religion harder. Because they're having a hard time in the book and then movie Fight Club. You shouldn't watch it, it's not kosher. But one of the great lines in both the movie and the book is like, in a generation where many men have been abandoned by their fathers, and God is supposed to be your father in heaven, it's no accident that many people have a problem with God. Right? It's not. Right? It's 1 plus 1 equals 2. Right? If your relationships with people help you to reflect on your relationship with Hashem, if there are problems with your relationship with people, that could affect that. It doesn't have to. You have free choice. But it's obviously going to be an influence. Right? Hello? Okay. So that's really exciting. The most powerful and important thing in my entire life, I have the power over. All day, every day, it's my choice. I decide. No one else decides. That's super empowering. It's also super scary because there's a part of us, there's a Yetzer Hara, that wants to blame other people for our problems. Very normal, right? Victim mentality. We all have it in us. It's a Yetzer Hara. Oh, it's not my fault because of blah, 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 blah. But the second rule is telling us it's not authentic. You're tricking. Your Yetzer Hara is tricking you. You're tricking yourself. There's no one else to blame. There is no, not your parents, not your spouse, not your children, not your rebbes, not your moras. No one's choice. Now, of course, they can influence you. We're all influenced by the things that happen in our lives. But the buck, as President Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. I ultimately make the decisions of my relationship with Hashem. No one else. That's scary because it's all on me, but it's exciting because that means I have all the power. Questions on that before we move on to number 3?
I'm very happy to know that I got the power.
I've got the power. You guys know that song? Yeah.
No. God won't have a relationship with us.
That's a really, really deep question. For those, do you need help? Really?
No.
Maybe something pharmacological?
No.
Okay, focus.
This is funny.
We have an amazing question in the back. Let's focus our attention. Please repeat the question.
Why does God want to have a relationship with us?
Good question. There are many, many different approaches to try to answer that. That would actually require a whole class. I don't want to leave you with nothing, so I'll give you one of my favorite answers from the Ramchal. Have you heard of the Ramchal? Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his book Das Tvunos, The Knowing Heart, he gives the following explanation. And just remember, there's how many books? Forests of trees have been turned into books, and oceans of ink have been turned into ink have been used to write on those forests of books to try to answer this one question. How do you like that for a metaphor? And it's the answer that Ramchal gives in Das Tvunos is something like this. The best that we can understand Hashem is that He is an infinite giver. And it's a mashal, it's an analogy, because we can't know anything exactly about Hashem. But the nature of the giver is to do what? To give. It's like, oh, I'm so generous, I'm such a giver. Oh, how much tzedakah did you give last year? Oh, nothing at all. Right? Then you're not really a giver. It's the nature of the giver to give. It's just their nature. It flows out from them. I give. I'm a giver, I give. So if Hashem is as best as we can tell with our human language, an infinite giver, that means there has to, for a gift to happen, you need three things. You need the giver, that's Hashem. You need the givee, the one who receives the gift, that's us. The whole purpose of creation, the tzimtzum, if you're into the Kabbalistic stuff, the whole purpose of all of creation is so that there could be, and the Rachel says this in Derech Hashem and also in Mesos Yesharim as well, is that there should be a being called humanity and ultimately the Jewish people that Hashem could give to. And what's the gift? It's Hashem. He gives himself. Because what's more to give than the infinite? So Hashem gives of himself to us. But you want to make it a little even crazier? What are we? It says that we mentioned this before. We're made b'tzelem Elokim. As it says, quote the Tanya, it says we are chelek Eloka mima'al mamish. We're a piece of God from up above, literally. There are other Sfarim who say it, they leave out the mamish at the end, because the mamish is a little problematic for some people. I'll answer your question in a second. And so, it's like Hashem giving himself to himself. Which makes sense, because there's only Hashem. Ein od milvado. Let me give you an analogy and then I'll take your question. Did you ever buy yourself a gift?
Yeah.
Wait a second. By the way, can you tell me your name? Milsey? Why was that funny?
It's Mindy.
I heard Milsey. I'm sorry. My ears. I'm 45 years old. My ears are going. Mindy. I'm sorry. I can't. It's not my fault. Mindy. You bought yourself a gift. Isn't that a weird way of putting it? Why don't you just say you bought something?
No, it's a gift to myself.
But how can you buy yourself a gift if you're you?
Self-care.
So this is what you have to do. Listen to this. Mindy, you're going to love this, right? I love it, so I hope you love it too, right? I don't want to put it on you, right? So I want to buy myself a gift. To do that, I actually have to psychologically split myself into two beings. There's the me, who buys a gift for myself. It's as if, I know I'm not actually two people, but otherwise it's not a gift. It's just, I bought something. So, as a mashal, it's a mashal, don't take it 100% literally, just take it for what it's useful to teach. That's what Hashem did. Hashem bought himself a gift. So to speak, he split himself into the me, that's Anoichi Hashem Aleikecha, I, me, and the creation is Ani, me. It's both I. There's two words for I. There's the Anoichi Hashem, and then there's the I of the human, where actually... Yes?
Well, I had to go through life and the tortures of life because Hashem wants to give a gift to himself.
Oh my God.
That's one way of framing it. But there are...
Sounds interesting.
Oh.
Are you okay?
Are any of us okay?
I don't know.
So, I mean, again, all mushals...
We have a piece of
Listen, it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. Life has a lot of suffering. There's a lot of difficulty and pain. Sorry? It's a very, very good question. So, it would take me more than a few seconds to answer the question fully. But again, it's funny because this was supposed to be a small answer, but the small answer led to another question. So I'll try to give you a small answer. Is that what is the ultimate mashal that the rabbis use to answer your question? Is a woman in childbirth. The mashal. Again, it's a mashal, right? You see a woman in labor. Imagine that you were a Martian, right? You were an alien from Mars as opposed to an alien from Mexico, right? You're an alien from Mars, and sorry, Mindy, and you see this thing. There's this woman, right, lying on the bed, and she's sweating, and she's in pain. And you're like, oh my God, who's torturing this poor woman? And you come over to her, and you're like, is everything okay? Who's harming you? And she looks at you like, what? No one's harming me. I mean, I guess maybe my husband, but you know what I mean. And I'm like, no, I got a baby. Like, but you're in so much pain, it's so difficult. Like, is it worth it? Obviously. Of course it's worth it. Ask any mother who's had children, right? Okay, as a father, I cannot relate to childbirth directly. I get that. But I have a mother, and I have a wife. And I've talked to them about it, right? And they both agree, especially my mom, right? They both agree that the difficulty of childbirth is paid over 1,000 times by the value of the child you get out of it. So as a mashal, the rabbis say, all of life is like a woman in labor. You see the pain, you see the difficulty, but what's going to come out of it is so amazing that when you look back, you're going to go, that was worth it. Take it for what it's worth. That's a mashal. Question.
Yeah. I don't understand how Hashem could want from us, because in my eyes, like, if you want something, you lack something, and Hashem can't
Right.
lack. So I'm just...
Would you say what?
Lack.
Hey, I'm just...
Lack. Not whack. Lack.
Not whack.
That's so whack. Is that a phrase that kids use these days?
No.
It's whack? Is it still a thing?
No.
No? It's not a thing anymore? No. Yeah. I'm behind in the times. It's been a long time since I was with the kids. It's a good question. I will answer it the way that I saw from Rabbi Dessler. You heard of Rabbi Dessler? For those of you who have not heard of him, it was worth waking up this morning just to hear about him. Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler is one of the greatest rabbis of the 20th century, and I think it's fair to say that he might be the most influential rabbi of the 20th century in terms of how we think about Judaism, Torah, mitzvahs, relationship with Hashem. He might be, if I had to pick one rabbi of the 20th century, I would pick Rav Dessler. Because you see the way people teach, the way they say, I was like, that's what he says here, that's what he says here, that's what he says here. It's like, his stuff is all over the place. And this is how I think this is how he answers it. Okay? There are two reasons that I could give you. I could give you because I feel bad that you don't have this thing. And so when I give it to you, I now feel better. Let me finish the answer. Let me finish the answer.
Okay.
You can't interrupt in the middle of the answer. And I don't know why I'm talking like this, so hi. So like, oh my God, boys choir. Yeah. No, that's almost a different voice. So if I give you because I feel bad you don't have the thing, and then by giving it to you I make myself feel better, so even though the act is an act of giving, the motivation is actually selfish. Right? And that's your problem. Like, how can Hashem have that? But he says, but there's another way to give. There's another way to give. This is if you want to see this for yourself, it's worth reading this. He has one of his essays is called the Kuntras HaChesed, the essay on kindness. It's like a whole bunch of pages. Take your time. Maybe learn it with a teacher. It is worth learning. If you learn nothing else from Dessler, the Kuntras HaChesed is well worth it. This is what he says there. He says, but there's another way of giving. And by the way, Mindy, it's so interesting that this answer comes back to the answer I gave you as well. It's right, exactly. Usually when people go like that for mind blown as opposed to like that. But okay, so kind of a different connotation. So now, so I was like, that was a little intense. So Rav Dessler says, but what if you're so filled with love? You're so filled with wisdom. You're so filled with kindness. What happens? It just flows out of you. I'm not giving to you because I'm missing anything. I'm giving to you because my kindness just flows out of me. I don't need to give you. It's my nature to give you. And it's so amazing, Mindy. I'm so happy that this came out because I've never connected these two pieces of Torah before. Thank you. It's so because it fits perfectly. I learned something new today because it's obvious to me now that when Rav Dessler was discussing the act of giving of human beings, he was actually learning from how Hashem gives, based on the Ramchal in Das Tzunos. It's the nature of the giver to give. I'm also sad, but I'm happy you're here now. Okay. Yes. One second. I need to finish this last one because someone has to go, and then I will take questions. So, the last one is quite simple. The last one is very simple, but very, very difficult for people to actually grasp. The third rule of relationship is that a relationship is not a relationship is not built on opposites. You ever hear the idea opposites attract?
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest lies you've ever been told.
We literally don't.
Thank you. Because if the opposites really attracted, the greatest relationship would be like Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler. Just get that one out of your head now, right?
I think it needs like
I need to finish this. I'm so sorry. I'm under a time constraint. I will take questions, right? Relationships are built on opposites. Can you have a really good relationship with people that do have opposites? Yes. But the opposites are not what build it. I am a very messy person. My wife is very neat. My wife never walked into the bedroom, saw my socks on the side of the bed instead of in the laundry, and went, oh my God, that's so hot. That never happened. Never once did I put the dish back in the wrong place. Like it was supposed to go in this one, and instead I put in this one, and my wife went, he's so disorganized, I'm so attracted right now. It's not what builds relationships, right? Now, you're willing to deal with it. Remember this phrase. Ladies, this is the most important phrase you're ever going to hear in your entire life about relationship with a man. Ready? Ready? Repeat this one 1,000 times a day for the rest of your life. He's worth it. Nothing else is more important. Because guys are crazy. They'll do weird things. They'll tick you off. But is he worth it, right? You have to make that judgment. He may not be, but he might be. Okay? So, relationships are not built on opposites. They're not. You deal with the opposites. Relationships are built in mutual admiration and affection. Mutual admiration and affection are what builds relationships. I look at you and I see a quality that I admire. Maybe it's a quality that I share with you. It doesn't have to be that I'm opposite. Maybe it's a quality I don't have, but I kind of wish I did. That's what admiration means. I wish I was more like... Sorry?
We fill in each other's gaps.
That's not the same thing. That's true, but that's not what builds a relationship. Because then, if you're perfect, and you find a guy who's the absolute biggest loser in the world, well, I'll just fill all his gaps, and then we'll have a wonderful relationship. No, it's not. You need someone you could admire. You need someone you could look up to. You need someone that you could go, you're amazing, I want you in my life. Not, wow, you're horrible, but I have something really cool that will fix your horribleness. Now let's have a great... That's not how relationships are built. Because that's pity. You're not really valuable in my life, but I'm so kind and amazing and generous and perfect and awesome that I'll make your life better. Here's a building of a great relationship. Obviously not. The worst thing you can ever tell a guy or a girl is, I have nothing, I don't want you at all. You are of no interest to me. You have nothing to offer me. But I'm kind, I'll do you a favor. You have to look at a person and say, there's so much awesome about you, I wish you were in my life. That's admiration. And then actually tell them and do something. That's affection. That's what builds relationships. We're done with the class. I will now stop the recording, and now I will take questions.